Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says understanding the process of issuing LOCs. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. What is this LOC? LOC stands for Lookout Circulars. Let me explain this with the help of an example. Let's say there is a person who's committed a cognizable offense, or let's say there is a person who happens to be a proclaimed offender. Who is a proclaimed offender? He is that particular person who's committed number of crimes. He has absconded. He is not seen in the limelight, and this particular person wants to evade the law books. He does not want to get penalized. He does not want to get imprisoned. So he is evading the law books. And as a result, if this particular person leaves the country, it will be even more tough for the police officers and the investigating agencies to put him behind bars. As a result, one of the notices that is issued at all the ports, that is the airports and the seaports, is what is called as lookout circulars. So what is a lookout circular? It is a notice to stop any individual wanted by police, investigating agencies, or even a bank from leaving or entering the country through designated land, air and seaports. So what will happen? You will have the police officers, you will have the investigating agencies, in fact banks as well. They will issue a lookout notice to the Bureau of Immigration, which comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs, so that this particular agency, in case that particular person is seen in the airport or in the seaport, they would be able to arrest this particular person for a temporary period and hand over this person to that particular agency. So this is what is called as lookout circular. So there are about 86 immigration checkposts across the country where LOC can be issued. Is there a law when it comes to the lookout circulars? At present, there is no law passed by the parliament which prescribes the power to issue LOCs. So basically, this is a power which is in executive in nature. When you speak about police officers would be able to arrest a particular person who's committed a cognizable offense. How? With the help of the CRPC. So the CRPC gives the powers to the police officers to go and arrest a person. But when it comes to the LOCs, we do not have a statutory backing. The parliament hasn't passed any law as such, but this is at the discretion of the executive. So what we have at present is the power to issue these circulars was first set up by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs in 1979. Subsequent memos were issued by the ministry in 2000 and 2010. So on the basis of these guidelines and memorandums issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs, what we have is this lookout circulars that are proceeded. So remember, we do not have a law. All that we have is this is at the discretion of the executive, and the executive would be able to use it to make sure that this particular person does not leave the country. So the concept of LOC is totally different from any other statutory provision, and this can be used for the proclaimed offenders. Who can issue the LOCs? We have different types of agencies. A large number of agencies, which includes Central Bureau of Investigation, Enforcement Directorate, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, Income Tax Departments, State Police, Intelligence agencies are authorized to generate LOCs. The officer should not be below the rank of a district magistrate or superintendent of police or deputy secretary in the union government. These agencies would be able to issue LOCs and can prevent a particular person from leaving the country. This also means another person who's wanting to enter the country may also engage in illegal activity. Such person can also be put out on the lookout circulars. So if there is a terrorist who's planning to enter, and if there is a lookout circular, this particular person can also be arrested at the airport or the seaport. So what are the details required to generate an LOC? Who issues it? When it comes to the LOC, we have, according to a 2010 official memorandum of the Home Ministry, details such as first information report number, court case number are to be mandatorily provided with the name, passport number and other details. So if a particular person has to be arrested for a temporary period, handed over to that particular investigating agencies, in that case, if there is a cognizable offense, what you will have is the first information report. This is available with the police officers. This first information report, and in case there is a court proceedings that is happening, the court case number and added to it if that particular person possesses a passport, the passport number, name and other details will have to be provided to the Bureau of Immigration. So the Bureau of Immigration will be present at the seaport as well as at the airport. They fall under the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the only executing agencies. So what would happen? The parent body, which can be the police officers, the Central Bureau of Investigation, Enforcement Directorate, make a request, and this request will land to the Bureau of Immigration, and the Bureau of Immigration would be able to temporarily arrest that particular person and ultimately hand it over to that parent organization. So do remember, it is not that parent organization which will arrest directly. They will issue a notification to the Bureau of Immigration, and it is this particular agency which will perform the required functions. And in case there is a liability, what do we mean by liability? Let's say this particular person is arrested by the Bureau of Immigration. So in that particular likelihood, what would happen? The liberty of that particular individual is violated under Article 21. So if this particular person is filing a case in the court of law, who will be the respondent? It will be that parent agency. This particular Bureau of Immigration can be added, but ultimate liability of running this particular case, providing the evidence, is with the parent body. So the liability is ultimately with the parent body, which has requested the Bureau of Immigration to make this arrest for a temporary period. Now what we have to understand is, from the year 2010 and even before that and after that as well, number of people have also been escaping and evading the law books. For example, we have Vijay Mallya, we have Nirav Modi, we have Choksi as well. These people are required by the banks in India. So under this particular guidelines that was issued, banks are also given the power to issue the LOCs. So in the 2000 guidelines, chairman, managing director, chief executive of all public sector banks can also generate LOCs against such persons who have caused detriment to the economic interests of the country. So such people can also be arrested and they can be handed over to the required agency. Further, the 2010 Ministry of Home Affairs guidelines gives sweeping powers to the police and intelligence agency to generate LOCs in exceptional cases. In these cases, they need not have to have the FIR, they need not have to have a court case number, and this basically means such individual could threaten the national interest. So all these parameters are not required, and we will have the Bureau of Immigration which can still make an arrest if the investigation agency asks for the LOC. And as we discussed, this does not have a statutory backing. This is running on the executive discretion. This can be misused as well. In order to prevent this misuse, we have the Delhi High Court, which in one of the landmark cases called as Sumer Singh Salkan versus Assistant Director and others, has issued some of the guidelines. What are these guidelines? The first guideline is, when the accused deliberately evades the arrest, when can this LOC be issued? Let's say a person has committed a cognizable offense. So this particular person has committed a cognizable offense either under the Indian Penal Code or any other law that is present in the country. It can be the NDPS Act, it can also be POCSO Act. So any other act where this particular person has committed a cognizable offense but is evading the process, is not allowing the police officers to investigate, he is not allowing them to continue with this particular process, and he is deliberately evading the arrest, not appearing before the trial court. This also happens to be a non-bailable offense as well. So in that particular case, LOC can be issued when detailed reasons have to be given by the investigating officer requesting for the LOCs. Apart from these reasons, the investigating officers will also have to give why that particular person is being arrested, for what reasons, is there an FIR against him, what is the case proceeding status. All of this will have to be given, says the Delhi High Court in Sumer Singh Salkan versus the Assistant Director and others. Are individual entitled to any of the remedial measures in case this particular person is being arrested at the airport? This is about violation of his reputation. His liberty is also getting violated as well. So what are the remedial measures given to this particular person? So what he can do, he can easily approach the court of law in that particular jurisdiction. So in this particular case, this individual can go to the court of law, file a writ petition that his fundamental right to travel outside the country is getting violated. We know for the fact that Article 21 of the Indian Constitution Constitution speaks about right to life. It also identifies the right to travel outside the country. If a particular person is not being allowed to travel outside the country, it is a violation of the fundamental right. He can directly approach the High Court or he can approach the Supreme Court as well. We have number of landmark judgments. In Vikas Chaudhary versus Union of India, the Delhi High Court came down heavily on the Central Bureau of Investigation for issuing an LOC against a man who earned his livelihood by exporting garments to foreign countries. Since he was not allowed to travel outside, it curtailed his right to personal liberty and also his livelihood as enshrined under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. In Rana Ayub versus the Union of India, the Delhi High Court said by restraining the journalist from travelling abroad through the LOC, her human right to travel abroad and freedom of speech and expression was infringed, and the Supreme Court of India expressed serious concern about abuse of the process in issuance of LOC in the case of Chandran Ratnaswamy versus KC Palaniswamy and others, and it also said that this particular petitioner had no cases against him. There was no criminal investigation, no criminal proceedings, but in spite of all of this, LOC was issued against this particular person. So these LOCs can also be misused. So what is the major concern? There is an opaque system in place under which LOCs are issued, and this ultimately may violate the liberty of that particular individual. So since this has no statutory backing, it can also be misused, which is what number of court judgments have clarified. However, it is a necessity because there are people who can also evade the law books, and these people need to be restricted from moving outside the country. And from the preliminary examination point of view, do remember, as per the norms, when this particular LOC is issued, it is valid for about 12 months, that is about 1 year. And before this is renewed, if it is not continued, it cannot be extended after 1 year. So when it is issued for the first time, it is valid for 12 months. If this particular person is not arrested, it cannot be continued after 12 months. It has to be issued freshly. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the rise of the AI chips. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. What are the AI chips? AI chips are also called as the AI hardware. They are particularly designed accelerators for the artificial neural networks. Basically, we have the AI chips which make use of application specific integrated circuits, field programmable gate arrays, central processing units and GPUs designed for diverse AI applications. So when we speak about AI chips, they are totally different from the conventional chips. The AI chips are built with a specific architecture. They have a different architecture than the traditional ones and have integrated acceleration to support deep learning based applications. These chips with their hardware architecture and complementary packaging, memory, storage and interconnected technologies make it possible to infuse AI into a broad spectrum of application to help turn data into information, then into knowledge. So what we basically have is AI chips are totally different from the conventional traditional chips. How are they different? What we have to look at is the features of the AI chips. When we speak about these chips, the major work of the AI chips is to perform specific functions, and these functions are performed more efficiently than the conventional one. When these functions are performed by the AI chips, they are performed simultaneously, which means they operate particular programming functions more efficiently and in a faster way than the normal chips. And at the same time, all these AI chips are designed to integrate machine learning and AI technology to make devices work smart, similar to that of the human brain. And with dedicated hardware AI chips, this also leads to prevention of the data leak, so it results in better privacy as well. And when we speak about these AI chips, they also prevent the latency. There is not much delay as well, and all these chips are capable for deep neural networks with lowest latency. This means that the chances of them getting concealed are at the lowest. Another advantage of the AI chips is the fact that they also have low power consumption, and this enhances the speed of this processor to a far greater extent. This article further makes a mention of the deep learning. What is this deep learning? This is more commonly known as the active neural networks or deep neural networks, which happens to be a subset of machine learning and comes under the broader umbrella of artificial intelligence. So what do we understand by deep learning? This is where machine learning technique comes into picture. It teaches the computer to do what the human brain is capable of doing. That is, the computer will start learning via the examples. Let's say we have the key technologies like the driverless cars, which enable them to recognize a stop sign. They will also be able to distinguish a pedestrian from a lamppost. All of these are the applications of the deep learning. Let's say, for example, we have the voice control in our phones. Let's say we speak about Siri, we also speak about Amazon Alexa, we also speak about Cortana, we also speak about multiple other voice commands as well. All of these are running on the deep learning, and ultimately what deep learning does, it combines a series of computer commands or algorithms that stimulate activity and the brain structure. Deep learning can make the process of collecting, analyzing and interpreting enormous amounts of data faster and easier. So basically, when we speak about deep learning, as the very name denotes, it is deep, which usually means there are hidden layers in the neural network. When we speak about the traditional neural networks, it may have about 2 to 3 hidden layers. So what are these hidden layers? What we have is the input that we give. We also have the output. So the difference that is present between this input and the output is the hidden layers. So when it comes to the traditional neural networks, it has about 2 to 3 hidden networks, but when it comes to deep network, they have more than 150. So they would be able to perform complicated functions in a faster and an efficient manner, and deep learning is a specialized form of machine learning. What are the applications of AI chips? AI chips are used in smart machines. These devices are used in data center class computers and edge devices. AI chips are used to assist in vehicle computers to perform AI applications more efficiently. As we discussed, we have the driverless cars. The driverless cars are an example of making use of the AI chips. The AI chips are used in wearable electronics, drones and robots. AI chips are also being used in natural language processing applications whose demand has increased due to extensive use of the chatbots, online channels such as Messenger, Slack and others. And AI chips have also been deployed in banking, finance, trading, insurance sectors as they help in customer interaction. So this particular field is further going to get complicated, and it will also perform much better actions in a faster way, and it will also make sure that this is performed far more efficiently than the traditional systems. So there are number of companies which are working on these AI chips. This include Nvidia Corporation, Intel Corporation, IBM Corporation, Advanced Micro Devices, Alphabet Inc., Samsung Electronics Co. Limited, Qualcomm Technologies, Apple Inc. are some of the key players in the AI chip market. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India needs to keep an eye on its myopia prevalence. This article here is speaking about short-sightedness or myopia. What is this short-sightedness or myopia? This happens to be a common eye condition where a person would not be able to see far off objects. If you are able to read a book, but if you are not able to see what is written far off, that is what is called as short-sightedness or myopia. What would happen? There would be a blurry vision. One would not be able to see what is happening at a far distance. Objects at distance appear blurry, and at the same time, because we are focusing too much at those objects, this may also result in headache and eye strain as well. So basically, if we are speaking about short-sightedness or myopia, it is that particular condition where a person would be able to see what is close by but would not be able to see something far off. Let's look into the statistics. Millions millions of young children are growing up short-sighted every year because of myopia. The World Health Organization estimates that there were nearly 2 billion people with myopia in 2010, a quarter of the human population. By 2030, they project myopia prevalence to reach about 3.3 billion people. If we consider the statistics with respect to India, 1 in 30 to 1 in 5 school children are presented with myopia, and data from East Asian countries have been particularly alarming. Even before the novel coronavirus pandemic, 80 to 90% of high school children in East and Southeast Asia were presented with myopia, and nearly 20% of them had high myopia. This basically means the children are suffering from myopia, and this needs to be taken into picture by the policymakers as well as by parents as well as by teachers. What are the causes of the short-sightedness? When it comes to the short-sightedness, what exactly happens? In people with short-sightedness, the clear frontal surface of the eye, which happens to be the cornea, curves too steeply, or the eyeball happens to be too long. This means that the light entering the eye does not focus on the back of the eye, that is the retina, but focuses in front of the retina, so the image appears blurry. So the light that is entering the eye should hit the retina, but it is not hitting the retina, but it falls short of it, and ultimately what happens? The vision becomes blurry over a period of time. How can this be corrected? A pair of spectacles is all that is required to correct this particular mismatch. However, if this particular concern is not addressed, what it can also result is in progressive myopia, and this progressive myopia may also become high myopia, and when this happens, that particular child can have complications like retinal detachment, glaucoma, macular degeneration, and this can lead to permanent vision loss as well. How does this occur? A host of environmental and genetic factors determine the onset of myopia. Many children, especially in the urban environment, are spending more time indoors and are always working near the work, so they keep constantly looking at the mobile phones, they keep reading something, they're constantly engaging with close items, be it at school or at homes. The quantum of amount of work that these children go through is resulting in this particular condition. They're constantly reading the books, they're either watching the laptops, they're playing with their phones or the laptops, and this has increased in the past couple of decades. This is why people have been developing this myopia. How is it affecting India? In India, we can broadly divide it as urban areas as well as rural areas. When it comes to the urban areas, let's say about 35%, these 35% are impacted by the myopia or the short-sightedness. The rest 65% who are present in the rural areas, the impact is comparatively less. So in urban areas, it is far more excess, but in the rural areas, it is comparatively less. Why is it more in the urban areas? Because children are always at homes, they are constantly reading, they are always on their phones, they do not play as well, they do not go on to the fields, but in the areas, they are almost always playing, they engage in field activities. So the impact is more in the urban areas than in the rural areas. As urbanization increases, so does the burden of myopia. So myopia can be twice as high among the young children when compared to the rural ones. If we look into the statistics with respect to India, small studies are already finding that myopia prevalence in urban Indian schools is relatively higher at 35%. The spectacle power of urban children with myopia is also increasing year on year. Taking all these factors into account, prediction models are pointing to a myopia prevalence of nearly 50% in India by the year 2050, similar to the global projections. So what are the measures that we may have to take? All the countries where myopia is increasing, they have to put in place a particular system. What is this system? Most of the children should be exposed to sunlight, and they should reduce near work for the children. What is near work? Basically looking at the books, playing in the laptop, playing in the mobile phones, constantly reading. This puts a lot of pressure on the eyes. this has to be replaced with distant work. Basically, distant work, when we say, they have to start playing, they have to start playing with the children, they have to go out in the field, and they should not be stressing the eyes too much. That should be one of the key parameter to reduce the myopia. Children should also go to parks, which means parents will have to encourage their children to go to park and also visit these places regularly. Schools must also encourage adequate exposure to sunlight, and the schools must also have annual screening which can be performed by the school teachers as well. This annual screening should be in such a way that all the children should be put to the test. In case myopia is discovered, children should also be provided with the glasses, and once they are provided with glasses, there is also social stigma as well, there is teasing as well. This has to be discouraged, so students should also be given that awareness about the glasses. So we must also tackle the social stigma around the spectacle wearing with tact and compassion are some of the measures that we may have to take to fight the menace of myopia. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says poor recovery, increasing delays mar IBC resolution process. The article here is speaking about the insolvency and bankruptcy code. Let us try and understand what is this article speaking about in nutshell. When we speak about companies, there are some companies called as the sick companies. These companies would have been running a particular business, but this particular business has not become profitable of late. They are not profitable, they are not able to generate the profits, their profits have completely drained up, and as a result they feel they have to shut this particular business. They also have people who have given them credit as well, so they have to repay back the credit as well. So in order to repay back the credit, what they have to do is they have to liquefy the assets. So liquefying the assets basically means that they have a particular asset, a building, or some of the tools, some of the equipment. All of this will be sold, and ultimately the money that is generated will have to be paid back to the creditors. Earlier, this particular process involved multiple laws. For example, we have SAR, FAECI, SARFAZI, we also had Lok Adalats, we also had debt recovery tribunals. All of these were working for making sure that if a particular company is not working efficiently, the same company will be liquidated, and ultimately those people who have paid money to this particular company, so their money is compensated by liquidification. So the recovery process is important on two fronts. One, to recover the maximum amount possible from the defaulter, and two, to make sure that this particular money is freed up and paid back to the creditor. But in this particular case, the earlier process, as we just discussed, did not work efficiently. To overcome this particular issue, what we had was the introduction of insolvency and bankruptcy code back in the year 2016. But this particular system that was introduced also has issues, says this article. What are these issues? Of the 2,600 cases that were closed by December 2021, 55% ended in liquidation, while only 16% were completed with proper resolution plans approved by the lender. On average, over 700 days were taken in financial year 2022 to complete a resolution process, but the deadline as prescribed under this act is 330 days. So there is time that is taken far in excess than what is given in the statutory provision. Moreover, during the fourth quarter of financial year 22, the amount to be realized from the resolution process was lower than the liquidation value. Worryingly, the lenders continue to take steep haircuts. What do we understand by these haircuts? Let's say, for example, a person has given about 10 crores to one of the organizations. So ideally, if I have given 10 crores to one of the companies, what should happen? That company should pay me back 10 crores, and if interest is present, they should also pay the interest as well. But in most of the cases, they are taking haircuts, which basically means that instead of 10 crores that is to be paid to an individual, that person may have been paid 9 crores or 8 crores. So there is a loss of 2 or 1 crore. That is what is called as haircuts. So even if that particular company is paying back the creditor, full amount is not being paid back to the creditor, which is not again being addressed by the IBC. In 100 out of the 500 companies that saw proper resolution, The haircuts were about 90%, which means 90% of the creators have also taken a hit, and this ultimately has become a major problem even under the IBC process. So this article currently goes on to say we have to bring changes. Why? Because one, there is undue delay. There is a lot of delay that is taking place. If you consider the prescribed time is 330 days, but it is taking more than 700 days, and at the same time creators are also taking a haircut, they're not getting their full amount. So what we have to do is we have to increase the capacity of the tribunals in the IBC. So the tribunals whose vacancies are present, this should be addressed as soon as possible, is one of the recommendation given under this article. A broader picture and more in details of this particular IBC process will be discussed in our economy this week. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. The issuance of LOCs lookout circular remains highly discretionary and the exercise of power under it remains questionable. Explain. What are the different ways in which AI chips are being used in various sectors? What are the recent innovations in the industry? So please write all your answers on the comment section, and in case you wish to upload an image, you can also come on our website, upload the answers of your image as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.